just telling Alexi about Sophia's investment tips she gave me.
Oh yeah.
Like we waited till we had 6 drinks, and then I'm like, tell me about investing.
The crypto stuff. Yeah. She's like, I gotta send that to Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I know. I think because even the stock market, I was thinking of that stuff too. But I just think the stock market right now too is so accelerated and hyper and overbought that I do think there's like
just wait a bit.
Crash is gonna come. Yeah. But what I did is when it crashed for COVID, which is kind of dumb, but it worked out so much in my favor. Is I was like, oh, this shit's not gonna last that long. Like the world will come together and get this figured out. In the stock market, it took like almost a 30% dive, and I'd never really been in it. And I'd got some investment I paid into my work for our stocks that, matured over 5 years. So it all came through as a lump sum. And then, so I had it for a bit and I was like, oh, what'll I do with this? So then the market dropped like 30%. So I put the whole thing in, and then it actually like recovered quite quickly.
Whoa, that's good.
I made so it was like I got in all these stocks at like a discount price. Yeah, so that's so I think that's going to happen again. Maybe not to the same degree, and maybe not soon, but it does seem so in a bubble now. Like the way there's like weeds, everything's just going crazy with stocks. But I also think everyone's bored at home.
For sure. It's so weird. Like at the beginning of the pandemic, music streaming numbers went way down because no one was listening to music. They were watching movies. So YouTube streams went up. And Netflix, like that was popular. And now music's kind of back. I think a lot of people listen to music when they work out or when they drive or when they go somewhere. So at home, it's less common, I guess. I guess if you're home, you're just going to probably watch something. So it's the beginning of that when you're being urged to stay home, you know?
Yeah, that is true. Especially if you're home with someone else, because then you don't want to blast your musical taste on them, but it's also weird to have headphones on. So that's wild. Because I, for sure, like the gym's my main music. And when I'm going to the gym like 5 days a week or whatever I'm doing, then I'm so on top of like, oh, have you heard this new album or that one? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I always grew up like loving hip hop and stuff. And my dad was the one, or not the one thing he did great. He did a lot of things, but one
talent.
One thing he really did well was music. Like he'd play like, like Pink Floyd, or like Bob Dylan. You'd always have
that's cool.
Those on as a kid. So then I feel I always appreciated those, but I got, heavy into hip hop and basically never got out. But then now I'm like, oh, there's probably so many things that are just that I don't really know the full album. Like, so I've like looked at like top 100 albums all time, and I've been like listening through those.
Oh, that's cool.
Like trying to, I don't know what, expand my horizons. But.
Do you, when you play it, do you write like stand up or anything while you're listening?
No, I will sometimes. Like I believe in a thing, actually it's a guy, Ryan Holiday's author dude I knew from back in the day. He writes like Ego's the Enemy, Obstacles Away. He has all these kind of books he writes that are philosophy oriented. But he said, if you, and which I don't think he made it up, but he was one that told me, it's like if you just listen to the same song over again to a point where it doesn't really like factor into your thoughts, it's just like a background thing. I have a few songs like that. Like I need this mood to write, but that's more for like writing.
Oh, so listening to the same song over and over again, you would write to that?
Yeah, I think so. Because then it's not like factoring into your thoughts. Whereas if it's a new song and it's great, you're like, the song takes priority. Or if it's like annoying, or if it's just anything, or the lyrics are weird, like or something, can just throw my thoughts off. But comedy, I just usually I put headphones on, like I have music, like noise canceling ones, and I just walk. Sometimes just up and down Hastings, like where it's crazy.
Really?
And then because then you just look. If you fit in, if you're just talking to yourself, like like you literally nobody bats an eye. So I just go back.
All your new materials about Hastings Street.
It is. I have this like whole chunk on it, and I'm like, I walk up and down, but it's true. But it's like, full. Not like it's not all on it, but I do have like 2 lines where I'm like, this is a real thing. And then some dude came up to me after a show at Keno and was like, oh man, I'm not comfortable when you talk about the homeless thing, and I was like, dude, I'm on that street, like, and I'm not dissing them, like I'm, it's like you got to be able to talk about. That's what comedy is.
Yeah,
it's a bit uncomfortable. You bring it up, but I'm not like punching down, being like these losers, like, or anything like that.
That'd be so crazy if you started.
I know it would be hilarious.
If you changed. You just hit it in investing, and then that's your whole act.
Yeah,
everyone's a loser except me.
Yeah, I think a few people that was like a killer act in the 80s, like 80s comedy. That would make you famous.
Punching down on homeless people.
Yeah, or the Hennepin. Yeah, I think it's like Dice Clay was a huge punch down guy. But
and then you go, oh, and everyone would be like, that's a punchline.
Yeah,
I know.
Is that a nursery rhyme? And then that sound? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we've evolved a little bit, but have we? I don't know.
I actually love Dice. I saw him at Gavin Matz opened for Bill Burr in LA, and I went, and then there was like a VIP area, and Andrew Dice Clay was in there with his son, who he clearly loves very much, and it was really endearing to see him being like, "You're fucking handsome." He still like sounds like that, even while he's complimenting his son.
Yeah, because you were saying you watched the Comedy Store documentary.
Yeah,
did you watch it?
I did, yeah.
But it's so funny that Dice is just his own, like how he's set up in that. He's just himself with no sleeves. There's no interaction. It's just like him going off, which is great. But yeah, I even like his new material.
I do too. I also love that it sounds like everyone that worked with him and knows him, he's completely committed to absurdity in a way that people don't know.
Yeah.
Like the different doormen that worked at the Comedy Store, the rule was if someone wanted a picture with Dice, the person taking it who worked there would have to, as a rule, take a photo and crop Dice just barely out of it. just to be an idiot.
Yeah.
And he also says that, and apparently he always steals bottles of water from the airport just on principle. Like he'll steal it from wherever and then just throw it in the garbage. Like he's just an absurd guy.
I do love that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's the same as like taking shampoo from like hotels and stuff too. It's like, but you don't use it. Like that's my thing is I just take it just because I'm like I paid for this hotel room.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take all.
I earned this body lotion that's in the shower. Always confusing. Do you put the lotion on and then wash it off in the shower? Or after the shower, you put on the lotion? I don't know anything about lotion.
It's very confusing. Well, body gel is another thing. I'm like, is this a lotion? Is this a wash?
It's for a loofah. But they don't supply the loofah because that would be disgusting.
It's for a loofah?
I think so.
Oh.
Body gels? Supposed to put it in a loofah and then exfoliate, I think.
That's so weird.
It does make sense.
It does make sense. Interesting. Well, I learned something new today about bathing.
I don't like the feel of loofahs, so sorry. It's all scratchy.
Yeah, I'm also not a huge fan. Plus it's like an extra step.
Exactly.
Well, like also, if you have one in your shower and like, what do you put it in like the wash? Like it just gets dirty over time, right? Like I feel like you can't put that in the wash.
No, self-cleaning.
Yeah, self-cleaning loofah.
It's soap.
That's the next thing we're going to invest in. It's going to go great for us.
Self-cleaning loofahs.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Chris, can you please tell the Tucker Max story?
Tucker Max story. The whole thing?
I mean, that was you got into comedy as like a teenager and then that kind of happened, right?
No. I got into comedy when I was 29, so very late starter.
Oh, it's opposite of what I said. 30. Sorry.
Yeah, but the Tucker Max happened all pre-comedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought you were doing stand-up opening for him.
No, not at all. Not at all. That's where I got introduced to stand-up more or less because Bill Dawes, who's a LA comedian, was on the tour doing that. Like he was opening for the movie. So it's a long shot. Some people probably don't know Tucker Max. If you don't, I don't know if I would in today's climate.
No, well, it's crazy because it was sort of like pre-Twitter.
Yeah, but it was brand new internet.
That was kind of thing where you'd share it with your friends, though. And it was this guy, and he was like a frat boy who would write these like pretty like ignorant things. He had a book called "I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell," and it was like a bestseller, but it was like very like man show kind of.
Yeah, it was. Do you know him? Are you familiar with him at all?
This sounds familiar.
Yeah. He was. So yeah, that's a decent description. So what it was, from my perspective, is the internet was kind of. It wasn't first invented, but it was, it'd become like commonplace where, I'd go to university to write essays at night and I would just, be on the computers and there was no content on the internet. I don't think YouTube was even invented yet.
Yeah.
So it was just websites. And I was just so desperate. And then there was this guy, Maddox, who would write these
he's funny, yeah.
Super, like, and at the time there was nothing like it, and he was just kind of like, kids are stupid. I think was what made him go famous.
Harry Potter sucks.
Yeah, and
the movie Signs is shit. I remember.
Even Harry Potter was not invented yet. but it even predated like Louis C.K.'s like kids suck bit. Like this was like in the 90s or something. And then yeah, and then so I found that, and through that found Tucker, and Tucker was like, "Hey, I'm an asshole, full on.
Yeah.
But the only service I do to the world is share my drinking stories and me being an asshole." And it was, I mean, and I was in college. I was like 22 probably when I first stumbled upon it. Maybe a bit older, even like 24. But it was, I'd never read anything like it. So it was the funniest.
Yeah, it was shocking.
Thing. Yeah, it was like super shocking. Like, oh my God, he can't say that. Now it wouldn't even phase anything. Now that the internet is full coming to its own and 4chans existed, like it wouldn't even be anything. But at the time it was, and weirdly from a male perspective to be able to kind of like, speak your thoughts or like, weird things. But in the original stories too, he would kind of lose at the end, even though he was like full on asshole the entire time. He would lose at the end, which is then you kind of laugh at him and you move on to the next story. And there are crazy stuff that you've never done or thought of or anything like that. So that was, and then I found out there was a book. And then from the book, I found out he had his own forum. And then I joined the forum. And then, that was hilarious. It was really popular at the time. It was like, massive, millions of unique hits a month or some kind of thing. And like users. And then so in that, I'd post some things and I became a moderator of that forum. And then I got to know Tucker through that.
Whoa.
And then when the book ended up, because it was rejected by everything. Like it was like
all the publications.
Nobody would touch it. Yeah. And it was I think Jeremy Strauss, the guy who wrote the game.
Neil Strauss.
Yeah. So vouched for
Tucker.
For Tucker.
I didn't know that.
How it happened. Yeah. And then it was like, this book will be something to Simon & Schuster, I think it was. And then they were like, yeah. And then it's, it's selling million of copies, airport commonplace. And the amount of people in that era that know that book is crazy. Like it was a thing for a minute for sure. And then then there was like an intense bidding process on the script because, Tucker had written a movie for it. But Hollywood wanted to be like, hey, we'll take it. We'll make our own thing. We'll cast our own people. And Tucker just demanded like creative control. He's like, no, you guys will mess it up. I want to do it right. So he took still a decent amount of money. It was actually with the guys who made Donnie Darko. At the time was called Darko Entertainment.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, but now they're under a different studio name. But it's, I think Sean McKittrick's the guy's name. But they did the Key and Peele, whatever the first
Keanu
scary movie was that they did.
Get Out.
Yeah, Get Out. They did that one.
Okay.
Which popped. So the same studio.
I think it's Blumhouse.
I can't remember the new name.
Okay.
Might be, but whatever that was, it was like formerly this. So it was a decent budget, millions of dollars, and then, they just made the movie, and then I was like, hey Tucker, I'll come help out on tour, and he was like, yeah, sure, and then so they just went on a tour bus. We premiered the movie before it came out in theaters, generally in college towns or sometimes some major metropolises, but where that we could get that demographic and their early 20s college kids, and then premiered it in like all sold out shows before it came out in theaters. So I was just like a nobody idiot in Canada, went on this tour. Bill Dawes was the MC, so he'd introduce the movie. They would do the movie, then he'd come out and do a Q&A, and Tucker would talk, and it was always like sold out. And then usually there was like a massive after party after almost every single stop, except the ones where we had to drive overnight. And it was just the most insane thing to me. And always had, like, since I was a kid wanting to do comedy, and Bill Dawes was there. I was like, hey man, how do I, get into comedy? And this other amazing dude, Ben Corman, was there. And him and I would ask Bill, and Bill's like, you just got to try it, man. Just go back. And I happen to be friends with a lady who was like a major GM and booker in Calgary for comedy. And then, so I was like, I want to try it. And she was like, yeah, I'll hook you up. So that was the whole Tucker thing. But the experience too, being on tour, was wild because the movie bombed. Like, full on. And if it had done well, we had like, a lot of big plans. I was editing some other websites for Tucker because he'd had like a stable of writers that couldn't get published. Some amazing people were in that, and then gone on to great success. Like Robert Greene, who wrote like 48 Laws of Power, and that, like he was in it. This guy Mark Ebner, that's an awesome journalist in LA. It was a whole bunch of people kind of in that couldn't get traditional publishing, but that Tucker was trying to blow up on the internet, which I think would have been successful. But then the movie didn't do too well for a lot of reasons. And
did he star in it?
No.
Okay.
He didn't. But he actually had a really funny role where he played like he played the best man of the guy who played Tucker.
Yeah.
Which was like Matt Zuckery. He's like, I think he's on like The Good Doctor or something, a show with Doctor in the name, or The Good Son, one of those shows. He he played it, but yeah, Tucker played his like idiot brother trying to give the funny best man speech at the wedding and just bombing.
That's good.
Which was pretty funny. But yeah, and then it was crazy too because I actually to a certain extent kind of like idolized Tucker and never having met him. And I'd met him a few times in LA and stuff before. And he's a very smart guy, but then he is an asshole. Like he was full on it. I mean, I think now he's done like a lot of like work and psychology and therapy and stuff. But he was like an incredible narcissistic asshole.
Wow.
But at the same time, was the only person ever in life when I was just 20-some-year-old kid in school that had ever said, "Hey, just do what you want in life. Just follow your heart." He didn't say it, that flowery, I guess, but he'd be like, "Just do what you want. Like, don't." And I was literally on this train track path of success, like, getting 2 degrees from university, buying a house, doing all that. But then that thought and then I got to meet all these like brilliant people and this cool creative community that he fostered through his message board. I was like, holy crap, you can kind of do everything. And then that tour proved it. Like he's on this multi-million-dollar tour with stars in the movie and press and like we bumped a movie out of the ArcLight Theater in LA.
Whoa.
Got the big premiere there. Yeah. And then like I think like Invention of Lying with Ricky Gervais was at the Chinese Man's or the other one. And it was like full red carpet. He let us all walk down the red carpet.
That's cool.
He's like, I want my crew to be there. So it was like incredible. But then the movie bombed and I just went back to Canada. I was like, oh man.
Is that when you decided to start doing stand-up though?
Yes. Like not like, and that Ben Corman from Philadelphia messaged me after and he's like, hey man, sucks. Cause he was going to move to LA, like, the whole thing. And I think him and I were really going to try to push the publishing, a physical imprint of books. Cause Tucker wanted to get out of his Simon & Schuster contract and, do physical books on his own imprint. But then the movie, just.
So the movie not doing well changed everything for everybody.
It did. It really. Tucker shut down everything. He shut down the message board. He just was like, because he'd been very cocky about like this movie. I'm gonna be flying over all of you in my private jet when this movie.
Oh no!
Yeah, he's like a wrestling villain.
But at the time he was the hero, and he believed it. And I think you have to have that insane belief in yourself to get to that level of success. So. In that sense, I can defend him and I believe it too. I was like, this movie, when I couldn't believe it got made. Yeah. And there was definitely some major problems with it. Like I think the director was a massive problem and some things, Tucker, who I think has admitted since then that he was purely green in the industry and in the experience and made some he's like, no, we got to do this, we got to do that. And those things piled up. One of the biggest mistakes is that they marketed it in theaters. They went for a mass distribution, not countrywide, but targeting theaters in college towns, not realizing that, or not factoring in that, the Friday numbers were decent. And I was literally in LA watching those numbers come in live with Tucker's assistant, and it came in, Friday was decent, but they're like, oh, we need a big pump Saturday or this thing. And Saturday, the numbers were 0.
Oh,
why?
0. Partly because of word of mouth, because the movie wasn't incredible. Yeah. But the biggest factor was because college towns shut down Saturday for their college football games.
Oh my God.
The whole town goes to the 100,000 people go to the stadium. So just the numbers were negligent. Yeah. And it was so bad that the theaters are like, oh, we can't. And they couldn't switch strategies and be like, hey, we'll pull it out of this theater because from the college ones, it was, they should have done a New York, LA small opening and, expanded from there kind of thing. Would have been cheaper and all these other reasons. So I think those things Tucker didn't know. But yeah, it was pretty wild. And then just to be back in Canada, there's nobody. And Ben's like, hey man, I'm going to fly up. And I'm like, yeah, I know this lady. She can get us on some open mics. We'll write our little comedy bits. And then in this jacket, I'm actually wearing Comedy Monday Night. She took us out there, got us spots. And
where's that?
In Calgary.
Okay.
Where I started comedy. Yeah. It's I think it's Canada's longest running room now, open mic, but it's just jam packed, every Monday. You can't even get in, except now for COVID and stuff. But it was such a great experience. But when Ben was like, oh, I'm going to come up and stay with you. He's like, I just want to watch the Super Bowl first. And I remember it was the day before the Super Bowl. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then book your ticket after. But he pretty much watched the Super Bowl. And he's like, yeah, I'm getting on a flight. And I was like, oh, today. And I had my house and just lived alone. So yeah, and he ended up staying for a month. And we just hit mics and drank. Wow. Yeah. And I'd never drank like I did during that time. He was the first guy in the morning. He's like, hey, you feel hungover? He's like, just have a drink.
Oh yeah.
Like, what? Yeah, and then that's a whole different. So yeah, it was wild, but it was fun.
Wow. So when you did the tours and stuff, you already had kind of like a career.
Yeah,
that was.
I had my own business. I had job. Yeah, it was like I did like rights and permissions, like a legal kind of thing, which was not like didn't involve a law degree. But like University of Toronto. Higher education was like my main client, and then this other company, Broadview Press, that I used to work for, but I just went on my own and contracted with them. So I had that full business, and then house and all that. But when I started comedy, I just couldn't look at spreadsheets anymore. Like it was my brain had just been like, because I'd repressed. And I'd always, one of the degrees that it was English, just because I'm like, I know this makes no sense for any future career, but I love it. So I want to do something I love. And I picked up poli-sci because I was going to go to law school. And then thankfully, like kind of read Tucker Max, and I was working at career services at university, and they're like, and the feedback for lawyer jobs, like post school, was so brutal that I was like, oh, I can't, and I hate rules. And I was like, man, that's not me at all. Like I just, I blew it all up pretty crazy.
Like, it's funny. Like my last day job I had was HMV, and I'd be there for like 8 hours a day, and I'd be like, this is such a waste of time. Right. This is crazy. This is like, I really just had this feeling like I was like dying a little bit being there, and no one cares. No one, you know what I mean? And it's like, and you're really doing two jobs, because you're doing that job, and then you go home and do the thing you actually care about.
Right.
And then you're
just... But HMV to you would be closely as merging your passion to a job that doesn't do it at all. Like maybe the first day you're like, I'm surrounded by music.
It was, I was, and then the people that worked there were really cool. And it's funny because that HMV was the big one on Robson.
Nice.
It closed down, and then the entire staff just somehow got jobs at Whole Foods.
Oh,
so I went in there, and it was like all of them. But you know what's so funny is like when I quit that job, it was because I got I co-wrote and produced some stuff for Carly Rae Jepsen, and I got a check for $7,000, and I was like, I quit. It was definitely the most money I'd ever had in my life.
Oh my god!
And then my boss at HMV was like, yeah, well, the music industry's tough, so like he was like really condescending, like you shouldn't quit HMV just because you.
Those people are the worst. Why? Like,
right?
But that's what kind of makes me agree with Tucker Max's things. Like, no, you're gonna fuck this up. You don't get the culture. You don't get it. So I need to be part of this, because it's like. He probably heard Sylvester Stallone say that, because Sylvester Stallone was so poor and then wrote the script for Rocky, and then studios were interested in it, and he was like, no, I star in it. And they're like, your face is weird.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I don't care.
He's like, the muscles compensate.
Yeah. He sold his dog in order to pay rent in that time. And then got the movie made, and then went and bought his dog back. Like, yeah, it's a wild story. But
that's really cute. I didn't know that.
You have to believe in yourself like that.
Yeah, I think you do. I think you do. And the funniest thing with Tucker too is that he was under immense amount of pressure too, that you can't really realize, and just all these things, and when there's that amount of money involved. But there's a movie, I don't know if you've ever seen it, or if you guys ever seen it. It's called Overnight.
Love it.
Do you know
my favorite documentary.
Oh shit,
it's the best. Everyone should see it. You got to come watch it.
I will.
Yeah. So do you know Boondock Saints? That movie?
I haven't seen it.
So as a big Tarantino fan, I'm surprised, because it's kind of an offshoot of that.
It is
Pulp Fiction success.
It is, yeah. So that, and then that movie too, which I remember this one time when I was working this night shift job while I was going to school, and I did a favor. I tiled this floor at a mall for this guy, and he was this massive stoner. And then he's like, I subcontracted the job. I worked like 6 days a week, so it was my Sunday off. 8 hours, and I remember he showed me how to do it, and then he just like kind of leaned back and was smoking. And I'm like,
oh my god!
I'm doing like 90% of this.
Looking good, Chris.
Yeah, and like he was like 28, which at the time was ancient to me, and I don't know how old I was, probably like 22 or something, probably younger even.
Yeah.
And I was doing it, but I'm like, whatever. He's the old guy. Now knowing like 27, still fine, like to do this. So I did most of the work, and then he's like, I'll pay you $500, which is again was just like this bonus fortune I would get of just cash.
Yeah.
He probably got the contract for like $5,000.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, hey man, he's like, hey, I'll pay you next week. He's like, okay, show up, doesn't pay me. He's like, can you just drive me home though? I'm like, yeah, drive him home. I keep giving him rides after work, and then he's like, and I'm like, and it's been like 3 weeks now, and he shows up, and I was like, hey man, where's my money? Like,
yeah.
He's like, dude, if you just drive me home, I've got the money at home. And I was like, yeah, this is the last ride you're getting home ever. He's like, I'm come into your house and get the money. He's like, no, I've got it. So he goes in the house, comes out, and he gives me like $250 cash, which is half. And then he's like, hold on. And he goes back and he gives me like a bag of weed that's like massive.
Oh my God.
Brick.
Oh, cool. I'll just give this to my landlord.
Yeah. And he's like, this is worth, way more than the other $250 if you sell it. And I think it was April. So school was just winding down. And then so that summer, I just smoked weed every single day. Like I didn't give it to anyone. I just waited. I remember by the end of summer, it was just like the driest. Like I'd be like, yeah, it would just like crumble. It was awful. But what I did too is I started at the A section in movies because I would work night shift and I remember I worked 21 days in a row, had one day off, worked 22 days in a row. So my summer was not spent partying. It was like, I would just like rent a movie, go to work, come home, smoke weed, watch that movie, and then drop it off on the way to work and rent another one. And I started at A's. I'm like, I want to watch every movie, I've missed in my life. And I think I only made it to like the D section after 4 months of just being stoned. But one was Boondock Saints, which I'd never heard anything about. And it was an incredible movie. Mm-hmm. But then that documentary is about how it got like torpedoed because the guy was such a dick. And Tucker himself, when he made the movie, he referenced that specifically. And it's like, this is what you don't want to be. You don't want to be this toxic, psycho, like self-absorbed person. But as it was so weird because I would write about the tour as it was happening, kind of blog live. And I had to stop because I'm like, I'm living this movie.
Oh my God, really?
This exact thing. Yeah. But I think it was, I still always will, to understand the pressure he was under.
For sure.
And that he made that whole thing happen.
He was the first viral internet thing.
Yeah.
He and Maddox kind of were.
They were full on. They were as far as like, especially for like, college age men, like, or whatever.
Like I remember in high school, people printing off stuff from their websites and bringing it to school. Like, check this out.
I know. Because there was like no Facebook. There was no, it was just the only way you would have to find a website. Weirdly, like there was no way to even find it. I guess Google, and I remember I found Maddox by typing best page in the universe or funniest thing.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, cool. What's this? And it was at the time.
So Alexi, Overnight is about this dude who it's so good. I've watched it like 20 times.
Yeah. And it's one of those movies that's supposed to be about something else. The movie becomes
it's a true story. It's a documentary. So this guy, he was a bouncer at a bar
in Boston.
And he on his breaks would write a script for the movie that ended up becoming Boondock Saints. Pulp Fiction had just crushed it. And so Miramax, which is the Weinstein company, we're looking for like the next Kevin Smith, next Quentin Tarantino kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And they got his script, loved it, bought the script from him. We're going to hire him to direct it. He'd never directed anything. Bought that bar for him.
What?
And
I think it was one of his demands or something.
And got his band signed to Maverick, which was Madonna's label.
What?
And it was like, what the fuck? And his attitude, like he's kind of like a schlubby guy who was always wearing like overalls and like pretty overweight and stuff. He started leaning into that, and he's like, I bet when you see me walk into your establishment, you just want me to leave. You don't know that I could fucking buy this place. He had that attitude. And it just became...
Because they were going to film this miracle story of this guy that came from nothing, but the money just instantly went to his head. Like 5 minutes into the documentary,
seriously,
they're like, oh, this is going to be...
like...
And they're just recording his like narcissistic, speeches. Like I'm being like, I'm gonna. Yeah, it was.
But he had like at his bar, he had like Mark Wahlberg hanging out, and big celebrities were like all on him. Like it was crazy. Yeah. And I would say from when he went from the Variety article talking about how he's the next big thing, from that point to 3 weeks later, I think he'd ruined his career forever.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah. I think there's a thing where like Weinstein calls him and he's like, you're fucking toast, dude. You'll never make it in the city. Like that kind of a thing to the most powerful man in Hollywood.
Harvey Weinstein was like, I would like you to consider Keanu Reeves for a movie. And then Troy Duffy is his name. The main character. He's like, Keanu Reeves is a buffoon. He will never be on my set. Like he's never made anything, and he's calling like this, really respected like legend and Buffett. Like
this was before all the raping. Nobody knew that at the time. Well, maybe Hollywood.
But it's crazy. You see how powerful he was back then.
Oh yeah,
Harvey Weinstein, and then his band, which is his brother and a couple other guys, it shows them in the studio, and that's hilarious. Like it's so good. It's so fucking entertaining.
I'm gonna have to watch it. I'm so excited.
Yeah, both. Even Boondock Saints is great. Like it's sort of Tarantino-esque, this ultra violent, weird timelines. But then Weinstein was like, this guy's such a dick. He just torpedoed his movie. Didn't give it any release. Like I don't know what he did to it.
He didn't end up releasing it.
Oh, didn't release it. He went straight to
everything he offered him. He took back, and then a little British company ended up making it.
Oh.
And then it tanked in the theaters, but on DVD it became a hit.
Massive. Because it's a decent movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, and so this guy, really,
it had like 1/10 of the budget it was originally going to have. But he still got Willem Dafoe in it, and Billy Connolly.
Kills
it. Yeah. And then he didn't make another movie, and he disappeared until like 8 years ago where he made Boondock Saints 2.
Yeah.
And he also, this is the other thing I was going to say is that
vastly inferior.
I haven't seen it, but he changed the name of his band to the Boondock Saints also.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was wondering about that because I was like, I know that there's a band too, and I didn't know the story.
Yeah. And then, so they got signed, and they got the guy from the Doobie Brothers to produce their album. And then the first week sales, and this was in the mid-90s, so people were buying CDs, was like 40 copies or something.
Oh, man.
It was rough. Like, I feel bad for him, but he was such a dick.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing. It was kind of exhilarating to watch him be such an asshole. I was like, whoa, that's confidence.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, you're like, you get what you deserve, kind of. It does feel good like that. Yeah. But it was insane that Tucker would be like, this is the example of what you don't want to do. And just literally do that. Like, there was some times where he was like, because I think once we did that ArcLight premiere and Hollywood saw it, it just collectively, because they, even up till then, they're like, we're extending the tour. Whoa. We're going to do this, that. And I was on some phone calls, and the actors that were in it, and I think it was like Jesse Bradford stuff, were on calls being like, hey man, we're dropping out of the press. Our agent said, like, don't touch this thing. It's whatever thing. And then I was there in the car, and Tucker's like, you guys, you don't know what you're doing, because they were locked up for sequels. He's like, you'll fuck yourself. Like,
oh my
God. And at the time, I was, like on Tucker's side, weirdly being like, what are you guys doing? Like this, this is all going great. The momentum's all in our favor. But very quickly after that, I could see kind of everything pull back. I could see the reviews. The other thing too is the reviews we would get from the college papers, unless it was a full-on bro reviewing the movie who was like already a Tucker fan, were not good. Like, and then so you're kind of like, is this movie good, or am I just so involved in it?
Oh man.
Like, I don't know. And I think watching the movie after, I had some friends watch it, and they're like, oh, it's terrible. Like, it doesn't capture at all.
I watched it recently.
Oh, really?
Because it was it just happened to be on a streaming service. And it was like, that's why I was like, is that him? Because I didn't actually ever know what he looked like.
Right.
Really.
Yeah. We weirdly look a lot alike, which was that was like one weird story. We were in Boston, and the other guys on the tour were like, it'd be hilarious if you go out, because the guys everyone would be like, are you Tucker's brother? They'd always say that. Like, I think he's got like, we don't look, if we were side by side, you'd be like, maybe cousins, but I don't know brothers. But people would always ask me, like, and I'm like, no. And then, but they were like, they bought me his outfit, because he would always wear like Under Armour shirts and like the same exact outfit every day. And then made me go out and like meet with fans from the tour bus as him. And
oh my God.
Hey. And then, so I was like going out there, and they were like playing it up. So I think it was in Boston. So, I was like, Tom Brady sucks, but I'm like, but he's handsome. And I was just like, just being like, I can't get over how handsome he is. And then maybe go and like take pictures with girls and like do all, and we thought it'd be hilarious. And then Tucker saw that, and he was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, full on snap. He's like, don't fuck with my brand. Like, that's who I am. Yeah. And and from then on too, it was like hell for 2 weeks, because he would just like, anytime I had like a drink in my hand, he would like slap it out of my hand. Like, it was just like full on like, fuck this guy. But I think finally the other guys were like, look, it wasn't his idea. I mean, I was fully on board for it. I'm like, this will be hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like terrified, because I remember they gave me a gray shirt, and I was just like massive armpit, like trying to pretend to be Tucker, like so nervous. God, so bad. But yeah, those things too, you could kind of see Tucker sort of, collapsing under all the pressure as it came through. But he's admittedly a narcissist too, which I think he's gone to therapy for. So that sort of narcissistic injury, like anything that compromised his belief in himself, what he would just react, almost violently to. But then, Yeah, but that's also, I think, what made this whole thing happen was just this, like utter and true belief, which he did have a lot of, talent. And so many people, we would get the submissions of people trying to write, to apply to be part of the thing and be like, hey, I write stories, and they're all Tucker copies, and nobody would come close to like how he would do it in the writing, like just like how he had a knack for dialogue. And I think like Tiffany Haddish, he, kind of ghost wrote her book, or like had
really
and that thing went bestseller, like
holy shit.
So I don't know if he ghost wrote it or collaborated with her, helped her writing, but I know he was heavily involved. But those like he does have that knack for sure of like whatever that is.
I'm so shocked that Neil Strauss co-signed his thing in a way. Neil Strauss, he was a writer for Rolling Stone. He wrote The Dirt, the Motley Crue book.
Oh yeah.
And then what Chris mentioned, The Game, which, do you know what The Game is?
Yeah, I think you were telling me about
It's pickup artist culture.
Yeah.
And I'm like so fascinated by it.
I know, maybe I've got the wrong, because is there a guy called Jeremy Ruby Strauss?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay. I don't know if I have the right Strauss. I'll look it up after. But it was definitely somebody I think it was the guy with The Game, because he'd had it published, and he's like, nobody believed in my book, and then this one will be a hit, and it was like an extraordinary hit for years after. Like people would, I'd still see it at the airport. Yeah. But the funniest thing is there's no frat culture in Canada, so in the States you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that's like say in today's years, like this, like 35 years old to 45 years old that hasn't heard of it. But here, much less, because college culture isn't like isn't as crazy here.
Oh man, it's funny too, because The Game, that book was a reaction to this other pickup artist who's from Ontario, actually, named Mystery.
Right. Yeah.
And Mystery wrote Mystery Method, I think, and then Neil Strauss wanted to go live with Mystery to learn how to become a pickup artist because he'd never been with any women or something. And they're the two like strangest looking guys, and then they were known as the two best pickup artists in the world.
Oh my god.
It's so fascinating to me. And then Mystery got his own reality show where he'd teach a bunch of dorks to go pick women.
That.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
It's such bad behavior, but so entertaining to watch happen. And it's like
Mystery, he wore like
he dressed like Jamiroquai.
Yeah.
He's like, you got to have articles of attraction. So the more interesting articles you wear, the more talking pieces you have. So I wear goggles and at least 25 bracelets, and I paint my nails and this hat and eyeliner and a fur. He basically just was dressing like Jamiroquai or a pimp costume.
Yeah.
And then he'd go in, and it's like his thing was like, if you walk into a bar and you haven't started talking to a woman within a minute, you've already lost the whole room. So you got to just walk right in and just start talking to people, do magic tricks and all this stuff.
Oh my god,
which is wild. And the funniest thing too is because Tucker, like unfairly in his opinion and potentially so, got labeled as like frat tire. It was like this new genre, but Tucker was so anti-frat boy. And even though he was a bit of, he was a bro and like, would drink and stuff, but he wasn't like, he hated those guys. Like,
oh, really?
Mystery dude. Yeah. He would, and he hated like The Game. Like he was just like, just be yourself, man. Like,
yeah.
And then and the other thing about Tucker that's at least in the media that's underrepresented, is that he is like incredibly smart. Like when you go to his,
I believe it.
I remember I'd go to his house, it was just the walls of books, and he'd talk to you and he'd be like, oh, it's like this. And he'd reference something, pull it out, open the quote, read the quote, he'd be like, I can't lend you the book because I need this thing. But he's like, but if you need it, let me. Like he was, super well read, very intelligent. So his persona is represented in
dude. He has like
work.
a genius level IQ that he applied to this kind of thing. That's so interesting.
I think
I think that about Fred Durst. Right. From Limp Bizkit. It's like, I think he just realized there's like this space in the market for that kind of guy to front this kind of thing, and then it works.
Which I also loved.
Yeah, I love it too.
I was like, man, at the time, I was like, this is great.
Yeah, hell yeah. I actually think he's gotten cooler with age too, because he's clearly in on the joke. I think I told you yesterday, like my band did a thing where we were on tour and we were in Montreal, and there was a Limp Bizkit cover band poster, and the band looked like shit. Like it looked so stupid that it looked like they looked nothing like it. And then the guitar player in my band posted it and tagged them. And then Fred Durst commented, looks just like us. Oh, we're like, yes, yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love when people come into their like their celebrity or whatever. It's so endearing, and people that can't. I just read a thing literally on the way here that was the movie Office Space. What's the character's his name is like a famous singer. Do you know?
Michael Bolton.
Yeah, Michael Bolton. And
Office Space is my favorite comedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, this was like, and then I'm so bad with names. That's why when you remember Troy Duffy, I was like, yes, like, it was incredible. But yeah, the Michael Bolton apparently is just like a raging, same thing, narcissistic. Didn't find it funny at all. Hated it, but then they're like, it was so prevalent that it changed him as a person because it made him like embrace it. And I guess there's a thing on the internet of him recreating all the scenes himself. So in a way, you're like, oh, that's awesome. That, like, whatever this did, because that's like what Trump always lacked. Like he could go on SNL, but he could never like fully embrace that he's like this buffoon joke. And it made him more so, I think. Whatever. There are people that have that weird personality trait.
Like the ability to like make fun of yourself if you're very famous goes, I mean, what's better? What's more likable than that?
Oh, nothing.
Oh, totally.
You can rejuvenate an entire career. You can't do it fake, but you could definitely, if you believe that, you can do that.
I was just thinking about how you were like that when Tucker got mad at you for impersonating him.
Right.
I was just thinking like he's getting mad at you. You're at the ArcLight, and then you have to go back to your day job, like your legal job. Yeah, that must have been impossible.
It was insane. And as the tour built, I was I initially blogged about it. Tucker linked through, so then that got like tons of hits, and people started being like, "Oh, I want to meet the Canadian." Like I was just the only Canadian on tour, so then Tucker would write about me sometimes.
Oh, that's cool.
This stuff happened. So then people, by the end of it, were like, "Oh, where's this Canadian guy? Like I want to meet with him." And so it became like, this really tiny microcosm of celebrity, but felt like I mattered. I had a purpose every day.
That's
it was
so cool.
so much pressure to like drive. We had like the tour bus, and then usually I would follow in the van. So I got to see the entire United States too, which was like, we went everywhere, which was incredible. And then I'd like get to a city I'd never been before, had to get the UPS, like get the swag, get it to the location, get it set up, do the show, and then it would just be like massive party after. Like, so it was
so
like
fun.
that. Yeah. And then I just went back and I was like, that was wild. Like, I guess I don't get to do that again. Yeah. And then, and strangely too, every single person that was kind of involved in that tour, there's another guy, Charlie Hohen, who's, a great author and kind of motivational dude. They all, this guy, Jeff Waldman, Ben Corbin, all those guys like have kind of gone on to do cool things too. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, that would be tough to go back to.
Oh yeah, I was like, I can't. So and then comedy, because I used to be a writer too prior to that, and I was decently successful at writing, but it was just so lonely, and there was no feedback mechanism. You publish something, and sometimes people would find it. Then I got a website, which was decent in the comments, but the comments on the internet are insane too. You got, the trolls and stuff, which I loved. But I became more known, I think, for like agreeing with them. Like they'd be like, "You're the biggest loser, this article," and I'd be like, "Man, you're so right. How did I mess?" And then they would be like, "Oh, you know what, man? Hey, I was being too hard on you. Like, I'm going through some shit right now."
Yeah.
They would become my super fans, and then other of those trolls would come in and they'd kill them.
Oh,
it was this crazy thing. But then when I did comedy the first time, and I worked pretty hard on my first 5 minutes, whatever, not crazy hard, but some people just go up and be like, I'm just going to riff or, write a day of. I really worked something out, had punchlines, and then, and it went well. And I was just like, man, this is the thing. Like, instant feedback. I'm in a bar. You could talk to people after. And it was just, it was.
That was in Calgary?
Yeah, that was Calgary. So, and still to this day is like my favorite thing. So I'm really glad I gave up a lot to do comedy, I think. But yeah, I'm glad I made that call.
You gave up a lot financially, but you've got to be way happier than you would have been.
Yeah.
Just suppressing your taste and the things that you like to do.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm 39 years old, and I think, we talked about that the last time we hung out, where it's like, if you repress those things, they may not come out at the time, but now for a man or whatever, like this is the time it starts to come out. Like, for some people, that I know that are just like, man, I didn't do anything. And then, I mean, it's one thing if you have like, I think the one thing is if you have kids or like that outlet and you're just like, hey, my life is for them.
Yeah.
Those people seem, extremely happy and they've made that choice. But yeah, if you have and even some of them that do have kids, but it's just like if you repress that creative thing, or that's something you could have been,
and the thing you're passionate about.
Yeah, you'll pay for it, I think, down the road.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, just wishing you'd done more. And I mean, but at any age, it's still not too. I just didn't find comedy and once I did, I was like, perfect, quit everything. This is exactly what I want to do.
That's so cool.
Well, I could be right now, still writing or whatever. I was trying to do all these creative endeavors, and if I found comedy today, I'm sure I would do the exact same thing. Like I would just be like,
that's what Dean Delray did. That comedian. He's like he's a pretty big comedian in LA, but he was like a roadie and a touring musician until his mid-40s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and now he does Goddamn Comedy Jam, that thing that they do, and he's like killing it. He's one of those guys that's like never said no to himself. Like he's just like, I can do anything I want. Like that's such a like attractive quality in people, Yeah.
It is crazy. And then, I mean, and it's funny too with having started comedy later, all like, my best friends in comedy were doing it like, anywhere from 7 to 10 years to start. So even though in age we're the same, more or less, give or take 3 or 4 years on each side. Yeah. But in like comedy experience, I'm younger than them. So I'm like this little brother trying to be
I get it.
Yeah.
But it's super cool to have that. To like have your friend and to see them stick with it. Cause I remember, like Dave Merhej, for example, came out and, I was a year, maybe not even into comedy or 2. And we did this tour and he was, 9 years in and he's like, man, I don't know. Like I work harder than everyone. I'm, on the, on the road all the time. I'm doing these shows and I just like, why is nothing taking off? And then I was like, I don't know, man, like you're killing everything I've seen you. And then he went back to Toronto and like won Homegrown in Montreal and won Toronto's Best Comic and then got on Mr. D and then now he's on Rami. Like it was just you have to kind of stick with it.
Do you remember me? I was with you and him when I gave him a pep talk. He was about to go to Australia and he was like, what's the point? And I'm like, dude, you're so talented. Like what else would you rather be doing? He's like, I don't know. Flash cut to him getting on that show, Mr. D.
Yeah.
I text him and I told you so. I text him and I told you so every time something cool happens to him.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wins the Juno. Told you so.
Yeah, he won the Juno. I know. It is funny. And that's the other weird extreme of like the super confident person who's like, I'm going to do everything. And then there's like the super, insecure, like kind of neurotic person who's like, I'm not good enough, but is still crushing it.
Yeah.
Like, Dave, you're fantastic. Yeah. But I think he knows his comedy skills for sure are good. And he works hard. Like he's always worked hard, but it is nice and it's so easy to not stick with it or just to be like, oh,
for
I
sure,
can't do this, because every single day is that feeling.
You know what though? Like if you're passionate the way you are and the way he is, it's like if you just stop doing it, I think you'd have this feeling like I'm blowing it by not staying there.
I would. Yeah. And it's tough because, for some people too, it can be like, it's like a detrimental to their life where they're like, I gotta keep doing it. It's like, hey, you just, but I think if anyone has a passion, the hard part is the work. Putting in like that, the
sticking
hard work
with it.
And then, usually pay off in some form. And sometimes in ways people don't even know. They'll be like, whether it be like the people they meet or some offshoot job, like, hey, do you want to come write for this thing? And that gets them right where they want to be. So I think it's worth sticking to it.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what it's going to lead to. All right, Chris Griffin, you've led an interesting life.
So far, yeah.
So many different things have happened for you and to you.
Still no success, but
what? Come on. You're a successful guy. You're so funny. I've been trying to make you release an album. I spent 7 beers with you the other day talking to you about it.
Yeah. We'll get there.
All right.
I think that's the best way to convince me.
Go for another 7.
Yeah.
I'll get you. All right. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.